The alarm clock screamed at 5:30 a.m., but Maya was already awake. She had been staring at the ceiling for the past hour, thinking about the pile of bills on her kitchen table. The electricity notice was bright red now, and her brother's next medical appointment was tomorrow. She couldn't afford to mess up today. Maya rolled out of her tiny bed and stepped over the stack of textbooks on the floor. She was still taking night classes, hoping to finish her degree someday. But right now, every dollar went toward keeping her brother alive. The doctor said he needed surgery soon, and the cost made her stomach twist into knots. She grabbed her old phone and checked the time. 3 catering orders today, plus her evening shift at the coffee shop. If she was lucky, she might clear $400. It wasn't enough, but it was something. The shower in her apartment barely worked, spitting out lukewarm water for exactly 4 minutes before turning ice cold. Maya had learned to wash her hair in record time. She threw on her black pants and white shirt, the same outfit she wore for every catering job. It was clean, at least. Her first stop was the wholesale market downtown. Maya bought ingredients with the little cash she had saved, carefully calculating every purchase. Chicken was too expensive today, so she switched to a vegetarian menu. Her clients wouldn't know the difference if she made it taste good enough. By 8 a.m., she was in the tiny kitchen she rented by the hour, preparing lunch for a law firm. 50 sandwiches, 3 salads, and 2 dessert platters. Her hands moved quickly, spreading mayo and arranging lettuce with practiced ease. She had learned to cook from her grandmother, who always said food made with love tastes better. Maya hoped her grandmother was right. The law firm order went smoothly. The receptionist even complimented her presentation and slipped her a $20 tip. Maya smiled and thanked her, but inside she was already calculating. $20 meant she could buy the good bread tomorrow instead of the day-old stuff. Her second job was a business meeting at some tech company. Maya loaded her car, a 15-year-old Honda that made weird noises but still ran. The GPS led her through the fanciest part of town, where she always felt like she didn't belong. The buildings were all glass and steel, reaching toward the sky like silver fingers. She parked in the visitor spot and gathered her supplies. 3 large coffee dispensers, cups, pastries, and fruit platters. Everything had to be perfect. These corporate clients paid well, but they also expected everything to be flawless. The lobby of the tech building was intimidating. Marble floors, modern art on the walls, and people in expensive suits walking around like they owned the world. Maya checked in with security and got her visitor badge. The elevator ride to the 10th floor felt like it took forever. By 2 p.m., she was exhausted but had one more job. This one was the biggest, a board meeting at Sterling Industries. Maya had never worked for such a fancy company before. Their building was legendary in the city, a 40-story tower that dominated the skyline. She had prepared extra carefully for this job. The order was for premium coffee service and gourmet pastries for 12 people. The client had specified everything had to be served in the executive boardroom on the top floor. Maya checked her supplies 3 times before leaving. Sterling Industries was even more impressive up close. The building was newer than the others, with a stunning glass facade that reflected the afternoon sun. Maya felt tiny walking up to the entrance. People in designer clothes walked past her like she was invisible. The security guard looked at her catering supplies and pointed toward the service entrance. Maya didn't mind. She was used to being directed to the back doors. But today she was running late because of traffic, and the main entrance was closer to the elevators. She decided to risk it. Maya gathered her supplies and walked through the main entrance, trying to look like she belonged there. The lobby was breathtaking, high ceilings, a waterfall feature, and furniture that probably cost more than her yearly rent. The coffee dispensers were heavy, and she was carrying too much. Once. But she was almost at the elevators when disaster struck. Maya didn't see the man coming around the corner until it was too late. The collision happened in slow motion. 1 second she was walking steadily, the next she was falling sideways. Coffee splashed everywhere. Pastries scattered across the marble floor. And somehow, in trying to catch herself, Maya grabbed onto the stranger's jacket, but it wasn't just his jacket. In her panic, her hand slipped, and she ended up touching him in a way that made her face burn with embarrassment. The man was tall, wearing what was clearly a very expensive suit, and he had frozen completely at her touch. For a moment, neither of them moved. Maya was mortified, her hand still awkwardly placed where it definitely shouldn't be. The man's eyes were the strangest shade of gray she had ever seen, and he was staring at her like he had seen a ghost. "I'm so sorry," Maya whispered, finally pulling her hand away. "I didn't mean to." "I was just trying not to fall." The man still hadn't said anything. People in the lobby had stopped to stare at the mess. Coffee was still dripping from the overturned dispenser, and croissants were scattered like confetti across the expensive floor. Maya dropped to her knees and started gathering the pastries, even though most were ruined. Tears threatened to spill from her eyes, but she blinked them back. She couldn't afford to cry. "Not here, not in front of all these people." "Miss," the man's voice was deep and quiet. Maya looked up from the floor, expecting anger or disgust. Instead, his gray eyes seemed almost curious. "I'm really sorry about the mess," Maya said quickly. "I'll clean it up. I'll pay for any damage. I was late and I wasn't watching where I was going." Security guards were approaching now, probably to escort her out. Maya's cheeks burned with shame. This job would have paid her rent for the month. Now she was going to lose the money and probably get banned from the building, but the man held up a hand, stopping the security guards. He was still looking at Maya with that strange expression, like he was trying to figure out a puzzle. "What's your name?" he asked. Maya hesitated. Maya Chun, he repeated slowly. "And you're here for—" "Catering service for the board meeting," Maya said quietly. "At least I was supposed to be." The man glanced at the mess around them, then back at Maya. She expected him to be angry about his suit, which now had coffee stains on the sleeve. Instead, he seemed almost amused. "Alexander Sterling," he said, extending his hand. Maya's heart stopped. Alexander Sterling. The Alexander Sterling. The billionaire CEO whose company owned half the city. The man known for being ruthless in business and impossible to please. And she had just accidentally groped him in his own lobby. She stared at his outstretched hand, not sure if she should shake it or run away. But something in his eyes made her reach out and take it. His handshake was firm and warm, completely different from his reputation. "Well, Maya-chan," Alexander said, still holding her hand longer than necessary. "This is certainly an interesting way to meet." Maya couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Alexander Sterling's gray eyes staring at her. She kept replaying the moment over and over, wondering how she could have been so clumsy. The man had actually been kind to her, which made it worse somehow. She had expected anger, maybe even threats. Instead, he had helped her clean up the mess and personally walked her to the service elevator. But kindness didn't pay bills. Maya had lost the biggest catering job of her month, and now she was back to square one. She sat at her tiny kitchen table, staring at the calculator screen. No matter how many times she added the numbers, they didn't look any better. Her brother Danny was sleeping in the next room. At 19, he should have been starting college, not fighting a rare blood disorder that required expensive treatments. Maya had promised their parents before they died that she would take care of him. Some days, she wondered if she was doing enough. The phone rang at exactly 9 a.m. Maya almost didn't answer because she didn't recognize the number. But these days, she couldn't afford to miss any potential work calls. "Is this Maya Chun?" The voice was professional, female. "Yes, this is Maya. This is Kelly from Sterling Industries. Mr. Sterling would like to meet with you today at 2 p.m. Are you available?" Maya nearly dropped the phone. "I'm sorry, what?" "Mr. Sterling would like to discuss a business opportunity with you. Can you come to his office this afternoon?" Maya's mind raced. Maybe he wanted to sue her for the mess yesterday. Or maybe he felt bad about her losing the catering job and wanted to help somehow. Either way, she couldn't say no to Alexander Sterling. "Yes, I'll be there." "Excellent. Please come to the executive floor, 40th level." Ask for Kelly at the reception desk. Maya spent the next few hours in panic mode. She didn't own anything nice enough for a meeting with a billionaire. Her best outfit was the same black pants and white shirt she wore for catering, but at least they were clean. The Sterling Industries building looked even more intimidating in the daylight. Maya took the main elevator this time, watching the floor numbers climb higher and higher. When the doors opened on the 40th floor, she stepped into a world she had only seen in movies. The executive level was all glass walls and expensive furniture. Abstract paintings hung on the walls, and fresh flowers sat on every table. Maya felt like she was visiting a museum. Kelly, the receptionist, was exactly what Maya expected, perfectly dressed, perfectly styled, and probably perfectly paid. She smiled at Maya with professional politeness. Mr. Sterling is waiting for you, right through those doors. Alexander's office was bigger than Maya's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the whole city. Maya could see her neighborhood from here, a cluster of old buildings that looked tiny from this height. Alexander stood with his back to her, looking out at the view. He had changed from his coffee-stained suit into a fresh one that probably cost more than Maya made in 6 months. When he turned around, Maya was struck again by those unusual gray eyes. Maya, thank you for coming. He gestured to a chair across from his massive desk. Please sit. Maya perched on the edge of the chair, too nervous to relax. Mr. Sterling, if this is about yesterday, I want to apologize again. I know I caused a mess, and I'm willing to pay for any cleaning costs or damage to your suit. Alexander raised an eyebrow. Actually, I asked you here for a different reason. Entirely. He sat down across from her, folding his hands on the desk. I have a proposition for you. A catering contract? Maya asked hopefully. No, a marriage contract. Maya was sure she had misheard him. I'm sorry, what? I need a wife. Maya, not for love or romance, but for business reasons. My board of directors has been pressuring me to settle down, to show a more personal side to the public. My image as a cold, calculating businessman is starting to hurt the company's reputation. Maya stared at him. You want me to marry you? 1 year, Alexander continued calmly, as if he was discussing the weather. In exchange, I'll pay you $5 million. You'll live in my penthouse, attend social events as my wife, and help me present a warmer public image. After 1 year, we'll divorce quietly, and you'll be free to live your life however you choose. Maya's mouth fell open. $5 million. It was more money than she had ever dreamed of having. It would pay for Danny's surgery, her student loans, and set them both up for life. Why me? She managed to ask. Alexander stood and walked back to the window. Yesterday, when you touched me. He paused, and Maya felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. Most people are afraid of me, Maya. They want something from me, money, power, connections. But when you touched me, even accidentally, there was no calculation in it, no hidden agenda. You were just a person who needed help, and I found that. Refreshing. Maya tried to process what he was saying. But you don't even know me. I know enough. Alexander turned back to face her. I had you investigated last night. You what? Maya stood up, anger flashing through her shock. I know about your brother's medical condition. I know you're working 3 jobs to pay for his treatments. I know you're behind on rent and your car needs repairs you can't afford. I know you're taking night classes to finish your degree, even though you can barely afford the tuition. Maya felt exposed, like he had looked through her diary. You had no right to dig into my life. I had every right to protect my interests, Alexander said calmly, but what I found impressed me. You could have declared bankruptcy and let the state take care of your brother's medical bills. Instead, you're working yourself to exhaustion to take care of him. That tells me you're loyal, responsible, and you don't give up easily. Maya sank back into the chair. This was all too much. This is crazy. People don't just marry strangers for business deals. Rich people do it all the time, Alexander said with a slight smile. The only difference is I'm being honest about it up front. But what about love? What about finding someone you actually care about? Alexander's expression grew cold again. Love is a luxury I can't afford. I've tried the traditional route, Maya. I was engaged once to someone my family approved of. She was perfect on paper, wealthy family, good education, beautiful, but she only wanted my money and status. When she found out about certain personal issues I prefer to keep private, she broke the engagement very publicly. It was humiliating and cost me personally and professionally. Maya saw something vulnerable flash in his eyes before the cold mask returned. What kind of personal issues? That's not relevant to our discussion, Alexander said quickly. The point is, I learned that romantic love and business don't mix well. This arrangement would be honest. No false promises, no broken hearts, no messy complications. Maya thought about Danny sleeping peacefully this morning without knowing how close they were to losing everything. $5 million would change their lives completely. What would people think? Your family, your friends, the media? Let me worry about that, Alexander said. You would be well prepared for any social situations. I'd hire the best stylists, teachers, whatever you need to feel comfortable in my world. And after the year is over, you'll be financially independent. You can finish your degree, start any business you want, travel the world. You'll never have to worry about money again. Maya stood up and walked to the window. From this height, her problems seemed small and far away. But they were still there, waiting for her when she went back down to the real world. I need time to think about this, she said finally. Of course, but Maya? Alexander's voice was softer now. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm asking you to help me and let me help you in return. Sometimes that's more honest than all the romance in the world. As Maya rode the elevator back down to the ground floor, her head was spinning. A year ago, she never could have imagined having this conversation. Now she had to decide whether to marry a man she barely knew for money she desperately needed. In a world she didn't understand, but when she thought about Danny's next doctor's appointment, the decision felt less impossible and more like the only choice she had. Maya said yes 3 days later. She called Alexander's office with shaking hands and told Kelly she accepted the proposal. Within hours, lawyers arrived at her apartment with contracts thicker than textbooks. Maya signed her name so many times. It started to look foreign to her. The wedding was small and cold, held in a courthouse with only Kelly and Alexander's lawyer as witnesses. Maya wore a simple blue dress she had bought from a discount store. Alexander wore another perfectly tailored suit. They exchanged rings that meant nothing and promises that felt hollow. When the judge said they could kiss, Alexander brushed his lips against her cheek so quickly she barely felt it. Moving into Alexander's penthouse felt like stepping into a magazine. Everything was white, black, or chrome. The furniture looked expensive but uncomfortable. Maya's entire apartment could have fit inside just the living room. She stood in the middle of it all, clutching her 2 suitcases, feeling more out of place than ever. Your room is down this hall, Alexander said, leading her past floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the city spread out below them. You have your own bathroom and walk-in closet. I've arranged for a stylist to come tomorrow to update your wardrobe. Maya's room was bigger than any bedroom she had ever seen. The bed could have slept 4 people comfortably. Everything was decorated in soft gray and cream colors. It was beautiful, but it didn't feel like home. Where's your room? Maya asked. The master suite is on the other side of the penthouse, Alexander replied. We'll each have our privacy. Privacy, Maya understood. This wasn't a real marriage, just a business arrangement. She shouldn't have expected anything different. The first week was awkward beyond belief. Maya woke up early out of habit, but there was no work to rush to. She wandered around the massive kitchen, trying to figure out how to use the fancy coffee machine. Alexander left for work before she got up and came home after she had gone to bed. They were like 2 strangers sharing the same expensive space. The stylist, a thin woman named Victoria, arrived with racks of clothes that cost more than Maya used to make in a month. Maya tried on dress after dress, feeling like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. Victoria critiqued everything from Maya's posture to her makeup to the way she walked. Billionaire wives don't shuffle, Victoria said sharply. They glide. They command attention without trying too hard. You need to look like you belong in this world. But Maya didn't feel like she belonged anywhere. The fancy clothes felt like costumes. The expensive shoes hurt her feet. The makeup made her face feel like a mask. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a stranger pretending to be someone important. Danny visited on the second weekend. Maya had told him she got married, but not about the money or the arrangement. He was shocked by the penthouse, walking around with his mouth open like he was in a museum. Maya, this place is insane, he said, touching the marble countertops carefully. How did you meet this guy again? At work, Maya said, which was technically true. He's different than I expected. Danny was getting his treatments at a much better hospital now, thanks to Maya's new insurance. The doctors were optimistic about his recovery. Seeing him healthy and hopeful made all the awkwardness worth it. Alexander came home while Danny was still there. Maya watched nervously as the two most important men in her life met for the first time. Alexander was polite but distant, asking Danny about school and his health in the same tone he probably used in business meetings. But later that evening, after Danny had gone home, Alexander surprised her. Your brother seems like a good kid, he said, loosening his tie as he stood in the kitchen. He is, Maya replied, cleaning up the dinner dishes. He's the reason I do everything. I know. Alexander poured himself a glass of wine. Would you like some? Maya nodded, even though she rarely drank. They stood in the kitchen together, sipping wine in comfortable silence. It was the first normal moment they had shared since the wedding. Can I ask you something? Maya said finally. Go ahead. Why are you really doing this? The marriage, I mean. You could have hired an actress or found someone from your own social circle. Why pick someone like me? Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Because you're real, he said finally. Everyone in my world wants something from me. They smile and laugh and say all the right things, but it's all performance. When you touched me that day in the lobby, it was the first genuine human contact I'd had in years. Maya felt something shift between them. That must be lonely. I'm used to it, Alexander said, but his voice sounded tired. Over the next few weeks, they started spending more time together. Alexander would come home earlier, and they would eat dinner in the kitchen instead of the formal dining room. Maya learned that he actually knew how to cook, something that surprised her given his wealth. My grandmother taught me, he explained one evening as he made pasta from scratch. She said a man should be able to feed himself and the people he cares about. Maya also learned about Alexander's strange habits. He didn't like to be touched unexpectedly, which explained his reaction to their first meeting. He worked constantly, even bringing files home to read before bed. He had trouble sleeping and often stayed up late looking out at the city lights. Don't you ever relax? Maya asked one night when she found him on the balcony at midnight. I don't know how, Alexander admitted. I've been working since I was 15. My father believed that idle hands led to weak character. Maya began to understand that Alexander's coldness wasn't natural, it was learned. Someone had taught him that emotions were weaknesses and that people couldn't be trusted. It made her sad to think about what kind of childhood creates that kind of person. Despite their arrangement, Maya kept working. She couldn't give up her catering business entirely, even though Alexander clearly didn't understand why she bothered. You don't need to work anymore, he said when he found her preparing food orders in his kitchen one morning. I need to feel useful, Maya replied. Besides, I love cooking. It's who I am. Alexander watched her work with curious eyes. You're very good at it. Thanks. Would you like to try some? She offered him a small sandwich she had made for a client. Alexander took a bite and his expression changed completely. This is incredible, he said, taking another bite. What's in it? Maya smiled, genuinely pleased by his reaction. Just turkey and avocado, but I make my own bread and use a special herb mixture my grandmother taught me. Your grandmother sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. She used to say that food is love made visible. Alexander looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I've never thought about food that way. What do you mean? Me, food has always been just fuel. Something necessary but not particularly enjoyable. Maya felt sad hearing that. Food had always been about family and comfort and celebration in her life. She couldn't imagine growing up without that warmth. As the weeks passed, their evening conversations became longer and more personal. Alexander told her about the pressure of running a company he had inherited too young. Maya shared stories about growing up with Danny and their parents' accident. Slowly, carefully, they began to trust each other, but it was still just an arrangement. Maya reminded herself. Alexander was being kind because she was helping him, not because he actually cared about her. When the year was over, they would go back to their separate lives, and he would probably forget she ever existed. Still, when Alexander smiled at something she said, or when he asked about her day with genuine interest, Maya felt something warm growing in her chest. Something dangerous that she tried hard to ignore. Because falling in love with her fake husband was definitely not part of the contract. Everything changed on a rainy Thursday evening in their 4th month of marriage. Maya had been cooking dinner when Alexander came home, looking more tired than usual. His shoulders were tense and there were dark circles under his eyes. Bad day? Maya asked, stirring the soup she was making. The worst, Alexander said, sitting heavily at the kitchen counter. The board is questioning every decision I make. Our biggest competitor is trying to steal 3 of our major clients. And somehow the press found out about a deal that was supposed to be confidential. Maya set down her spoon and really looked at him. Alexander always carried stress well, but tonight he looked defeated. Without thinking, she walked around the counter and gently placed her hands on his shoulders. Alexander froze at her touch, just like he had that first day. But this time, instead of pulling away, he slowly relaxed under her hands. Maya began massaging the tension from his shoulders, and Alexander closed his eyes with a soft sigh. Feel better? Maya asked quietly. Much better, Alexander said, his voice rough. When he opened his eyes and looked at her, something had shifted. The careful distance they had maintained was gone, replaced by something warmer and more dangerous. Maya, Alexander said softly, reaching up to touch her face. The moment was broken by the sound of Maya's phone ringing. She stepped back, her cheeks burning, and answered the call. It was Danny, excited about his latest test results. By the time she hung up, Alexander had retreated to his study, and the moment felt like it had never happened, but everything was different after that. Alexander started coming home earlier, and their dinners lasted longer. He asked about her catering business and actually listened to her answers. Maya found herself looking forward to seeing him each day, and that terrified her. The problem was that Maya was falling in love with her fake husband, and she was pretty sure he was starting to care about her too. But their contract had an end date, and she couldn't forget that this was all temporary. Things got complicated when Alexander's world started demanding more of Maya's attention. There were charity galas to attend, business dinners where she had to smile and make small talk with people who clearly looked down on her. Maya did her best, but she always felt like she was one wrong word away from embarrassing Alexander. The worst was Isabella Thornton, Alexander's ex-fiancée. She was everything Maya wasn't: tall, elegant, born into wealth, and absolutely beautiful. Isabella had returned from 2 years in Europe, and seemed determined to reclaim her place in Alexander's life. Maya first met Isabella at a charity auction. The woman glided over to their table wearing a dress that probably cost more than Maya's old car. "Alexander, darling," Isabella said, kissing his cheek like Maya wasn't even there. "I was so surprised to hear about your little wedding. How ... Unexpected?" The way Isabella said "little" made it sound like something cute but unimportant. Maya felt herself shrinking in her chair. "Isabella," Alexander said coolly. "Maya, this is Isabella Thornton. Isabella, my wife, Maya." "Wife," Isabella repeated, looking Maya up and down with barely hidden amusement. "How fascinating. Tell me, dear, what do you do?" "I run a catering business," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "How charming, like a hobby." Isabella's smile was sharp. Alexander always did like to help people less fortunate. Maya felt like she had been slapped. The comment was designed to make her feel small, and it worked perfectly. She excused herself to the bathroom and spent 10 minutes staring at herself in the mirror, wondering what Alexander saw in her that could possibly compare to someone like Isabella. When she returned to the table, Isabella was gone, but Alexander was watching Maya with concerned eyes. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Fine," Maya lied. "She seems nice." Alexander's jaw tightened. "Isabella is many things, but nice isn't one of them." But Isabella wasn't finished. Over the next few weeks, she seemed to appear everywhere Alexander and Maya went. Always perfectly dressed, always saying things that sounded polite but felt like insults. Maya began to dread social events, knowing Isabella would be there to remind everyone that Maya didn't belong. The situation got worse when Maya overheard a conversation at a business dinner. She had stepped onto a balcony for fresh air when she heard Isabella's voice from around the corner. Give it 6 months, Isabella was saying to someone. Alexander's little charity case is sweet, but he'll get bored. He always comes back to what he knows. You really think he'll take you back? Another woman asked. Darling, I know Alexander better than anyone. This whole marriage is just him acting out because I hurt his pride. When he's ready to be serious, again, he'll remember what real partnership looks like. Maya felt sick. She slipped back inside and spent the rest of the evening smiling and nodding while Isabella's words echoed in her head. Was that really all she was to Alexander? A charity case? A way to get back at his ex? The doubts got worse when Maya discovered Alexander had been helping with Danny's medical bills beyond what the insurance covered. She found the paperwork in a folder that had been left on the kitchen counter. Not only had Alexander paid for the best specialists, but he had also covered experimental treatments that weren't approved yet. Maya confronted him that evening, waving the papers in front of him. What is this? She demanded. Alexander barely looked up from his laptop. Medical bills? I can see that. Why are you paying them? This wasn't part of our agreement. Your brother needed help. I helped him, behind my back. You made me think the insurance was covering everything. Does it matter where the money came from? Yes, it matters. Maya's voice cracked. It matters because this makes me exactly what Isabella said I was, your charity case. Someone you're taking care of out of pity. Alexander finally looked up, his eyes flashing with anger. Isabella doesn't know what she's talking about, doesn't she? You married someone poor who needed help. You're paying for my brother's medical care. You bought me a whole new wardrobe because my clothes weren't good enough for your world. How is that not charity? Because I care about you, Alexander said, standing up. Because seeing you worry about money keeps me awake at night. Because I want you and Danny to be happy and healthy. But why? Maya demanded. Why do you care? We barely knew each other when we got married. This is supposed to be a business arrangement, remember? Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Maybe it started as business, he said finally. But it stopped being business the night you massaged my shoulders and didn't ask for anything in return. Maya felt tears threatening. I can't be your project, Alexander. I can't be the poor girl you saved to make yourself feel better. That's not what this is. Then what is it? Because in 8 months our contract ends and I walk away with $5 million? How is that different from being bought? The words hung between them like a wall. Alexander's face went carefully blank, the same expression he wore in business meetings. You're right, he said quietly. This was a business arrangement. I'm sorry if I made you feel otherwise. Maya felt her heart break a little. Alexander, I didn't mean... I think we both need some space to remember what this relationship really is, Alexander said. I'll be staying at my downtown apartment for a while. He left that night, taking only a small bag. Maya stood in the empty penthouse, surrounded by luxury that suddenly felt cold and meaningless. She had pushed him away to protect her pride, but now she wondered if she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Isabella called the next morning, her voice sweet with false concern. I heard Alexander moved out, she said. I hope you're all right, dear. Maya hung up without responding, but the damage was done. Everyone in Alexander's world would know their marriage was falling apart. And Maya couldn't help but wonder if Isabella had been right all along. Maybe Alexander was already getting bored with his charity case wife. 3 weeks passed without a word from Alexander. Maya threw herself into her catering business, working 16-hour days to avoid thinking about the empty penthouse. Danny visited every few days, worried about her pale face and the dark circles under her eyes. "You look terrible," he said bluntly one afternoon, finding her in the kitchen making her 100th batch of cookies that week. "Thanks for the pep talk," Maya muttered, not looking up from her mixing bowl. "I'm serious, Maya. What happened between you and Alexander? One day you seemed happy, and now you're baking like the world is ending." Maya finally stopped mixing and looked at her brother. "It's complicated, Danny. Try me." So Maya told him everything. About the marriage contract, the money, the way she had fallen in love despite herself, and the fight that drove Alexander away. Danny listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious with each detail. "You're an idiot," he said when she finished. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. You're an idiot if you let him go because of your pride." "It's not about pride, Danny. It's about you being scared," Danny interrupted. "Maya, you've taken care of me your whole life. You've sacrificed everything for my medical bills. Now someone wants to take care of you for once, and you're pushing him away because you think you don't deserve it." Maya felt tears threatening. "You don't understand. People like Isabella are right. I don't belong in his world." "So what?" "He doesn't belong in yours either, but he tried. He learned to cook pasta in this kitchen. He asked about my treatments every time he saw me. He looked at you like you were the only person in the room, Maya. That doesn't happen because of a business contract." Before Maya could respond, her phone rang. It was Kelly from Alexander's office. "Maya, I need you to turn on Channel 7 News." "Right now," Kelly said, her voice urgent. Maya grabbed the remote with shaking hands. The news anchor was standing outside Sterling Industries, and the headline at the bottom of the screen made Maya's heart stop. Sterling Industries CEO announces major changes. Double quotes ... Alexander Sterling shocked the business world today with his announcement that he's stepping down from several key positions to focus on philanthropic work. Sources say this decision comes after months of pressure from his board of directors and recent personal challenges. The camera cut to footage of Alexander at the podium, looking tired but determined. Maya turned up the volume. "I've spent my entire adult life building this company," Alexander was saying. "But I've learned recently that success without purpose is meaningless." Effective immediately, Sterling Industries will be donating $50 million to establish the Maya Chun Foundation for Medical Research, focusing on rare diseases that affect young adults. Maya's knees gave out. She sank onto the couch, staring at the screen in shock. Alexander continued, "I've also decided to step back from day-to-day operations to pursue other interests. I want to use my resources to help people who are struggling. The way someone recently taught me that real wealth comes from lifting others up, not looking down on them." The reporter tried to ask questions about Alexander's marriage and recent separation rumors, but he walked away without responding. Danny was staring at the TV with his mouth open. "Did he just name a $50 million foundation after you?" Maya couldn't speak. She watched as the news switched to interviews with business analysts discussing what this meant for Sterling Industries' stock price. But Maya wasn't thinking about money. She was thinking about Alexander's words and what they really meant. Her phone started ringing constantly. Reporters wanted interviews. Lawyers called about the foundation paperwork. Isabella even called, her voice no longer sweet, but sharp with anger. "I hope you're happy," Isabella spat. "You've ruined him." Alexander was brilliant, ruthless, successful. Now he's throwing it all away for some misguided romantic gesture. "He's not throwing anything away," Maya said quietly. "He's finding out who he really wants to be. Don't be naive. This foundation, this whole performance, it's just him trying to win you back. When you reject him, he'll come crawling back to me." Maya hung up and turned off her phone. She needed to think, and she couldn't do that with the whole world calling her. That evening, Maya made a decision. She packed a small bag and drove to Alexander's downtown apartment. She had never been there before, but Kelly had given her the address months ago for emergencies. The building was nice but not flashy, nothing like the penthouse. Maya stood outside apartment 12B for 10 minutes. Working up the courage to knock. Alexander answered the door in jeans and a t-shirt, looking more relaxed than she had ever seen him. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Maya, what are you doing?" "Here? I saw the news," she said. "Can I come in?" Alexander's apartment was smaller than the penthouse but felt more like home. There were books everywhere, comfortable furniture that looked actually lived in, and photos on the walls that Maya had never seen before. "Is this where you really live?" Maya asked, looking around. "Sometimes. When I need to remember who I am, instead of what I'm supposed to be." They stood awkwardly in the living room until Maya couldn't take it anymore. "Why did you do it?" she asked. "The foundation, stepping down from the company. Why?" Alexander sat down heavily on the couch. "Because you were right. I was treating you like a charity case and I hated myself for it. You deserve better than that." "Alexander, let me finish," he said. "The day you left, I realized something. I spent years building walls around myself, telling myself that emotions were weakness and that people would only hurt me. But you climbed over every single wall without even trying. You made me want to be better, not just richer or more powerful." Maya felt tears starting. "You don't need to change who you are for me." "I'm not changing for you," Alexander said, standing up to face her. "I'm changing for me. Because the man I was before you came into my life was miserable. He was successful, but empty, rich but alone. And now? Now I know what it feels like to care about someone more than I care about profit margins. I know what it's like to come home to someone who's genuinely happy to see me. I know what love feels like, Maya. And I don't want to go back to living without it." Maya's heart was pounding. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you. Not because of our contract, not because you need saving, but because you're brave and kind and real in a world full of fake people. You make me want to be the man you see when you look at me." "Alexander, I love you too," Maya whispered. "I have for months. But I was so scared of being your charity case that I pushed you away instead of trusting what we had." Alexander crossed the room and took her hands. "You're not my charity case, Maya. You're my partner. You're the person who taught me that real strength comes from caring about others, not just protecting yourself." "So what happens now?" Maya asked. "Our contract still has 4 months left." Alexander smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him in weeks. "I think we tear up the contract and start over. No lawyers, no time limits, no conditions. Just 2 people who want to build something real together." "What about your board of directors, your company?" "Sterling Industries will be fine without me micromanaging everything. And as for the board, they can learn to deal with the new me, the one who cares more about being happy than being perfect." Maya laughed through her tears. "Isabella is going to hate this. Isabella will find someone else to bother. Probably someone who actually wants her attention." Alexander cupped Maya's face in his hands. "I want to marry you again, Maya, for real this time. No contracts, no conditions, just because I can't imagine my life without you in it." "Yes," Maya said without hesitation. "But this time, I want Danny to walk me down the aisle. And I want to wear my grandmother's ring instead of some expensive one your lawyers picked out." "Deal," Alexander said, kissing her softly. "As long as you promise to keep cooking for me. Those sandwiches you make are better than anything money can buy." Maya laughed and kissed him back. "I promise. But you have to keep making pasta. Deal?" "Deal." 6 months later, Maya and Alexander had a real wedding in the community center where Maya used to volunteer. Danny walked her down the aisle, beaming with pride. Alexander's grandmother's recipe for wedding cake was perfect, made with love and shared with people who actually cared about them. The Maya Chun Foundation was already funding research that was giving hope to families like theirs. Maya's catering business had grown into a successful restaurant that employed people from her old neighborhood. And every evening, Alexander came home to their apartment, not the cold penthouse, but a real home filled with laughter and homemade food and the kind of love that money can't buy but makes life infinitely richer.